This is Get In The Mecha, the weekly anime and manga show where we take things one step further. I analyze everything from arcs to OPs to episodes in my wacky but enjoyable quest to make sense of all of it. Welcome back to Get In The Mecha. I'm your host Jamal today, and in today's episode, this is a very different episode actually, and this week will be a Fillersode. I didn't really know what to record this week. It is a really weird time in the year. I'm kind of in the middle of doing end of year content or preparing for it, but at the same time sandwiched in between it being the first week of December, and so I didn't really know what to do here, whether else to put a genuine episode, sort of analysis episode, or I was going to do something completely different, or just start the end of year content, but I didn't really want to milk that out, so I want to keep that special. That will be coming in the next 3 weeks, or across the next 3 weeks. So in today's episode, we're kind of just doing whatever, we're kind of riffing off here. So in today's episode, I basically just want to talk about what I've been watching lately and some things I've been thinking about when it comes to anime and all of that. Think of this as your favorite comedy podcast, but it's just not funny. So, minus the humor, I'm kind of talking a lot less structured as I usually would on, say, a genuine or regular episode of Get In The Mecha, but even so, I still do have topics for today's episode, so do not fear, this isn't going to be me waffling for an hour about Gurren Lagann, but in today's episode, what I do want to talk about is my experience with Gurren Lagann. And I just have a few things I want to talk about in regards to that anime because I've recently finished it. All Saints Street, I want to cover that as well, one of my favorite anime this year. And then finally, I want to talk about a few excess things which I've been doing. Like this week I started reading Chainsaw Man. And I also kind of want to sound off on a bit of the Attack on Titan stuff. But let's get into the episode for this week. That is episode 72 of Get In The Mecha, a Fillersode based on what I have been watching recently. This is a very unusual episode of the podcast as is, and that should mean that there probably won't be any spoilers. I'm not intending to spoil anything. I might be talking about some themes from the anime or manga which I'm discussing, but besides that, it's pretty much just a non-spoiler discussion about some things which I've been watching. So I'm not going to spend a whole moment talking about alerts on Get In The Mecha as we usually do, because this isn't a normal episode. So I want to start off with Gurren Lagann, an anime which I've had kind of in my quote-unquote watching list for, I want to say almost a year. Maybe not a year, but for quite a while. I said that I was watching Gurren Lagann, or I started watching Gurren Lagann months ago. I watched about 3 episodes or so, and then I kind of took a break. I watched a few more episodes, took a break, and I kind of did that up to about episode 11 or 12, the beach episode. And why did I do it? I don't know. I was enjoying it up to that point. I didn't really have a problem with it. I still enjoy it, and I think it's a very good anime. But up to that point, I don't really know why I was doing that. But recently, I actually took the plunge and decided to kind of watch it every other day or in my evenings with dinner. And I really enjoyed it. I think that was one of the best anime I've watched in quite a while. There have been some really good anime this year as well, but out of the seasonal loop of things, or at least out of the seasonal bubble, I have to say that I really did enjoy watching Gurren Lagann. I'm gonna be honest and say that the middle part of the anime, so probably around episode 11 to about 14 or so, or 15, weren't my favorite. But I think as the show evolved, and the thing which I'll be getting into as we sort of progress in this mini analysis, what I really enjoyed, and I'll just say it now, is how it sort of wrapped around itself. So the content at the end of the anime kind of changes our perception or grows our perception of what comes comes afterwards, or what came before it, sorry. And I do like that. There are a few shows which I have said in the past that have been really able to do that. Great example would be Attack on Titan, and that episode we did, that was one of the first, I'm pretty sure that was the first 5 episodes of the podcast. I spoke about this notion of value basically wrapping back around the anime itself, because all of the people that previously passed in the anime now had this value because of the recent events in that specific arc in Attack on Titan. And with Gurren Lagann, I think a similar thing is being done. This notion of progress and evolution and the sort of infinity of ambition really underpins what the show intended to do, but it wasn't as explicit, but we see it evolve, and it all comes back to that very idea of ambition being infinite. Everything from the spiral, how the mecha is basically built around this very idea, and it's built almost in this evolutionary way, and how we have the separate parts. We have Gurren and we have Lagann, and then that transforms and that transforms again, and it all just loops around the same idea. And I absolutely love when that is done, because it shows that everything has been thought out around this idea, and it's not really just so these riff off ideas as well. It's centralized around one thing, and that is included within its formatting, within its designs, in terms of mecha designs, in terms of its themes and everything. And so Gurren Lagann, similarly to a lot of the, at least like a lot of the Trigger Gainax works, I think is just really good. In summary, there's just a lot of thinking that's gone into it. Imaishi and Nakashima are obviously an amazing, experienced combo, and Gurren Lagann being probably their most famous work, in my opinion, probably alongside Promare. I can basically tell why it is their most famous work now, because it's probably the thing that really got them on, not the only thing that got them on the map, but the big thing that got the Imaishi and Nakashima name on the map. It's really because they're such an amazing combo, and they did it again over 15 years later. Okay, not exactly 15, but about over 10 years later, Promare comes out and they managed to smash it again. Maybe not as good as Gurren Lagann in my opinion, but considering it's a film and everything, I still think it does a great job. This links into what I want to talk about, and that is animation and animators. And I've been tweeting about Gurren Lagann for about a week, if not 2 weeks or something like that, because there are so many moments that I just want to talk about and to analyze, and I'm not really going to do that here in today's episode, but it's just when you consider how far Gurren Lagann was, relative to time, how Gurren Lagann is over a decade old. It's still one of the most ambitious combinations of animators I've seen. It gets together so many Kannada schools or style animators, and all these animators that are really good at utilizing the Kannada style. So people like Yo Yoshinari or Sushio, and when we get to sort of the core Kannada school side, we have people like obviously Imaishi and Akira Amamiya, and even Jun Arai in some cases. I love how we're bringing, or the anime manages to bring together animators that complement each other. It isn't just, yes, sometimes what we call stacked as sort of a production when we're talking about sake and anime. Often we do just see a lot of famous names together, and there isn't anything wrong with it. But in my opinion, what is probably more stacked in that definition is when we have a series of animators that kind of fundamentally work off a similar thing, and that is the work of Yoshinari Kaneda to some extent. But enough on animation, let's just spice things up a bit. And another thing which I have been watching is All Saints Street. It was on the Lenses episode. Yeah, definitely on the No, sorry. It was on the Jujutsu Kaisen episode where I had voice submissions, and I said that instead of talking about All Saints Street, I'll do voice subs as an experiment. And we don't actually have any voice subs for this week, which is okay. But now that actually gives me a good opportunity to talk about All Saints Street, which I said I was going to talk about in that episode. All Saints Street is a donghua, or it's a Chinese anime, and this has to be, for me, the sleeper pick of 2020. I hardly hear anyone mention its name at all, and it really hurts. As a really big fan of this anime, honestly one of my favorites from this year. I just think it deserves so much credit. I'm basically skirting around saying underrated because I really don't like that term. It's really reductive, but it's definitely, I think, deserves more viewership at least. The anime basically concerns a demon called Neil, or his full name is Neil Bowman, and yes, he's a demon, but he's also very cute and he's very nice, and what he does is he moves to Earth. I think, if I'm not wrong, he lived in hell, or at least, where demons live anyway, and so they runs from his parents, even though they don't really show it, but he runs from his parents, moves to Earth, and he finds a place which has a bunch more other like angels and demons and just other like supernatural beings and stuff, and so he moves in there. I do believe that they live in a world where they sort of live in harmony anyway, and so he moves in and it's pretty much the slice of life anime about that sort of stuff, and I just think it's just the perfect balance of a lot of things. There are quite a few anime that do concern a similar thing. A great example of that would be Interview with Monster Girls, an anime which I also quite like. It's not, for me, it's not the most memorable thing, but the fact that I remembered it in the case of All Saints Street, I think shows that there are similar things like this. This All Saints Street isn't the most unique thing I've ever watched. However, there are a lot of other things it does really well. Like, I really do enjoy its format. It's 4 minutes per episode, plus the OP and ED, minus the OP and ED, so it's about 3 minutes an episode. But in turn, I think that's really good because it really gives I think that is the core of slice of life, and I'm not really knocking other slice of lives in the process that aren't 4 minutes because there aren't too many of those. But I like how it gives us a really tiny dose of humor and a really tiny dose into someone's life, and even across the span of say 20 episodes, which we're up to right now, we still get such a good sense of who they are, and that just shows great characterization really, and just really distinct personalities and really memorable moments as well. It comes out weekly and it's on its final episodes for this season, even though there are 2 seasons. So you have a whole season and you have about 4/5 or like 3/5 of the season left to catch up to. So you can catch up to that in about a day. It's not very long, but it's very enjoyable. And I'm sure that anyone in the audience that likes slice of life, All Saints Street is the one you need to go to, because it's a really fun mix of the more typical slice of life elements, but it's also imbued with being a supernatural being and how that works or applies to the real world. How do we manage the two? Like always, when you live with someone, there will always be those qualms that you have, and All Saints Street brings up those qualms as well, but it also has very charming and very beautiful moments as well, and that is why it is probably one of my favorites this year. These are just a few loose things that I kind of thought about on the last minute before I start recording this episode, because this isn't a very organized episode versus the others. But I have started watching Chainsaw Man. I say watching all the time, I mean reading. Hopefully that means I'm speaking into existence an anime that is coming out, but at least for now I have started reading Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto. This has been a manga which I planned to read for a long time, and I think it's the news that I heard that the manga is ending when this is being recorded next week, and so I'm not trying to catch up or something, but now that things are kind of over or are about to end, I'm kind of willing to jump on the train now because everything's done. I don't need to think about, how am I going to catch up or anything, and yeah, I can kind of discuss it and talk about it in my own time rather than, all the context and the current hype and all of that. So that's why I kind of like reading a lot of finished manga, even though I do have quite a few that mostly manhwa I read week by week, but for manga I really just like to read the whole thing when I have the time. Doing that with, One Piece doesn't count because it's not finished. You know what I mean? I'm doing that with One Piece, and I am doing that with Chainsaw Man. This is probably gonna sound like the most un-Jamal thing to say, but Chainsaw Man is probably what I would define as a vibe. It's so like, I'm not saying the analysis I do is like scientific, but if it was, that would be the most unscientific way to describe Chainsaw Man. It's just a vibe, and yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's very chill. Okay, it's not chill, but I feel chill from it, mostly because I don't say I know what's going to happen, but the way the characters are and the way that some of them are a bit off the edge in some places is really me watching how they gonna get out of this. I know they're gonna get out of it, but how crazy is Fujimoto going to make them getting out of it, and how cool is it gonna be? And so it's like, how are they gonna do it rather than what are they doing? And yeah, it's pretty good. I am enjoying it so far. It has lived up to the insane amount of discussion I've heard about it. Maybe not discussion, but a lot of people talk about the manga, at least how they felt about that week's manga. I honestly don't read much Jump manga. If you know me, a lot of the manga I read are just things that aren't Jump, basically. Besides One Piece, which I'm reading right now, and okay, I read Boruto's not really like, at least weekly Shonen Jump, but most of the manga I read is either monthly manga or it's just stuff that isn't Jump. So I read Koito Uzo. I recently read My Broken Mariko, very touching manga. I do read Berserk from time to time, even though I'm not caught up at all. I just finished Golden Age like a year ago, or not even a year ago, about a year ago, but I just haven't been reading it lately. I will get to Conviction though, but I generally I'm not very in the Jump sphere in comparison to other people. A lot of people that I know, they read almost everything within the Jump circle, and I'm not criticizing that, it's just not me. And so me entering the Jump sphere is definitely something new. But what is interesting about Chainsaw Man, okay, first thing, as I was kind of getting onto, if I got into this tangent, was that it is formatted very well, in my opinion, and that's one thing I love about weekly manga. It's probably the right amount of pages to keep me invested and hooked, and I know I'm in for something relatively substantial, but at the same time, it isn't insanely long. I can progress relatively quickly, and that's what I really like about One Piece as well. It's about 20 pages per chapter, and I'm very bad with commitment, basically, and so you don't really catch me reading many monthly manga while they're coming out, because besides maybe Boruto, but even that I'm behind. But the reason for that is just committing to reading a monthly chapter is hard for me. And yeah, I really like that in regards to Jump. The second thing which I wanted to say was that what I really like about Chainsaw Man is how it doesn't feel very jumpy to me. That it gets weird when we talk about the shonen demographic and everything, but at least it being in a shonen publication or weekly Shonen Jump, I like how different it is to what we're very used to. And Chainsaw Man manages to spit in the face of, maybe not spit in the face, I'm not saying it's disrespectful, but at least conceptually what it manages to do is kind of veer away from this whole thing of long-term aim, rather idealistic protagonist or goal that they have in mind, everything from the pirate king to the greatest hero and things like that. It really comes down to the most smallest of pleasures, like I want to get a kiss. And that's something I kind of like about Chainsaw Man. It's still trying to figure itself out, and it stands out relative to the other manga in Jump, which is what I'm trying to say. And the final thing, which is Attack on Titan 4th season. When this is being recorded, it's about a week left, if not like 5 or 4 days. So things are very tense right now. I don't want to say it's annoying me. I don't really like to complain on the podcast, but I am kind of getting very tired of the discourse. It is very, if I use Twitch terms, it's very hopium based. And there's like a side of the general community which is like, okay, this is going to be really good, like Mappa, you got it, and then there's the other side which is like, no, this isn't gonna work the production's looking like a shambles, which it is, and a bunch of other things. I'm not here to like try and resolve the conflict. I'm kind of just saying my tiny piece on it, and that is that I'm tired. I just want this to come out already and kind of for it to be resolved. But the thing that we have to note is that it won't be resolved, or at least I think right now Mappa is in a position in which they are being sort of exposed for their practices which we know have existed in the anime industry for a long time, and Mappa isn't doing anything new. They're kind of just in the spotlight right now. Mappa's not the first studio, unfortunately, in the anime space to overwork their animators and overwork their creatives, unfortunately. But what I'm really hoping that comes out of Attack on Titan is that whether the final product looks good or not, we don't brush over the practices and forget that, okay, because Attack on Titan Season 4 did well, that these practices don't matter, because they do. And it is important that we don't forget what these studios are doing. And hopefully this could be the potential. There are some things which are going on, but hopefully this is the start of something where people are more aware of this thing. People are more aware of production and things that are going on within, well, behind the scenes, and who is making your anime and who are the people who are not allowing good things to happen. And when I say good things to happen, I mean stuff like animators getting paid a decent wage and a fair wage and stuff like that. So I don't want to get too deep into this, but I just think it's, and I don't mean to end on like a sad note, but it is unfortunate that we are in this situation, and I just think we need to capitalize on it, because this is serious, and it's been serious for a long time. But I just hope that this brings a lot more awareness to what happens behind productions. And this isn't something, the point isn't whether Attack on Titan is a good anime, whether it looks good. Sure, I would love for it to look good. I don't think anyone wants it not to look good, but that isn't the complete point. But that is the episode for this week. I can't really say the analysis. I didn't mean to end it on a sort of negative note, but it's something that's kind of been getting to me in regards to the Attack on Titan stuff. So yeah, that's been very in my head. There are no segments for this week, because this basically was an in the moment segment overall, and I don't have any voice subs for this week, so I will play or edit in the outro music here, and I will see you or greet you out in the outro for the episode. Thank you for listening to Get In The Mecha. That has been episode 72, if I am correct. I always forget the numbers of the episodes, but anyway, thank you for listening. If you did listen to this Fillersode, I'm sorry I couldn't really get a proper episode together, but I also did have quite a lot of fun on this slightly shorter than usual episode. If you are listening on YouTube, it would be lovely if you left a like, subscribed, bell for notifications if you want to get it very early. View on the podcast or any of the topics which I spoke about, feel free to talk about those in the comments section. I would love to have a discussion. Also, if you do like the podcast, go onto Apple Podcasts and leave it a review. That would be awesome if you did. And then finally, if you want to have your voice on the podcast, we didn't have any this week, which is totally fine, but if you do want to have your voice on the pod, then there is my SpeakPipe link, which is a voice submission. You can say something for 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's a voice note pretty much. You can ask questions. I do sometimes do the question of the week, which I might bring back. But besides that, thank you for listening. It has been a bit of a weird episode, but I hope you enjoyed it. I have been your host Jamal today, and this has been Get In The Mecha. The music in this production goes as follows: 8-bit title screen by Joth and Mandatory Overtime by Joth.